Hey guys, it's Mike here, and welcome back to Cell Saga Media, in which I'm going to be talking about what is this Cell himself, and not just in terms of Cell, but whose cells were used for Cell when he was created. Now, this is actually a topic which, on the surface, might seem relatively simple and obvious, but when we dig deeper, we start to see that sometimes it's not just as obvious as it might seem, but even more, that it's also a difference of continuity. So with that being said, I'm going to be going into the original version, Toriyama's manga, and also talking about, well, what exactly the anime seems to have done differently in terms of everything like that. So let me go into this right now. So here's a little glimpse we get into the idea of Cell in this chapter that Toriyama explained his character. The monster's riddle is solved. And we see some of them right here. It's interesting looking at how Toriyama did this. For instance, we see the genetic components of Vegeta. We see Piccolo, Goku. We see Frieza and King Cold. I even have a video discussing a number of these characters and what effect they had. First one, top right corner, what effect did King Cold have on Cell? Second one, what effect did Frieza have on Cell? Third, what effect did Vegeta have on Cell? Fourth, what effect did the androids have on Cell? Maybe I'll do another one soon about what effect Piccolo had on Cell. I can't point that in the corner, but I'll add another one there eventually. You know what? Let's do another one. Why Cell is the best villain in Dragon Ball in general. 5 cards already. Man, I'm breaking a record. So when we get into this, we get an explanation of Cell and who he really even is to begin with from the horse's mouth. Now he says right here, once upon a time, maybe I should say the cricket, the weird lizard bug man, his mouth. Once upon a time, his duck bill, it almost kind of looks like one. Once upon a time, Dr. Gero collected cells from the greatest fighters and began conducting research on artificial humans, Jinzo Ningen, killing machines, the androids, cyborgs, whatever have you, who could be synthesized from those cells. So he's talking about himself. So, due to the sheer amount of time required for the task, he gave up on it midway through, leaving his computer behind to continue the work for him. Now, what's next? We see some of the people he used. Son Goku, Piccolo, even Vegeta's cells were collected. All of them were harvested after the battle that took place during Vegeta's arrival on Earth. We see Vegeta defeated by Gohan. We see Piccolo when he was killed by Nappa defending Gohan. And we see Goku, whose body is broken on the ground. So this is when their cells were harvested. He doesn't mention Gohan's cells being harvested, so there's a strong possibility he wasn't used at all in this. Piccolo even makes note, Goku from all the way back then? That'll explain why your Kamehameha was nothing to worry about. Because after all, he's implying, I guess, that either the output of power or perhaps more likely the way that Cell had kind of polished the technique compared to what Goku did over his training wasn't quite as good with his ability to use it. In addition to this, we were fortunate enough to come by the cells of Frieza and his father when they arrived here on Earth. So a lot of people, for whatever reason, seem to think that they didn't have the cells of Frieza and his father. However, Gero's computer acquired the cells from them autonomously without Gero even knowing about them or the Super Saiyans or anything like that. That's one of the things people are like, well, Gero must have known about Super Saiyans, Frieza, and King Cold, right? Or he, why didn't he know about them, blah, blah. It's because he didn't know about them. He wasn't paying attention to this project anymore. He was working on himself and just extrapolating the power of Piccolo, Frieza, or Goku, and other characters by the time they were going to encounter and fight them, using even the most extreme numbers, without the knowledge, of course, of Super Saiyan, but he at least knew about the Kaioken because he was following them during the Saiyan saga where Goku used that. And he saw how much stronger he got on King Kai's planet, for instance. And he probably knew he was a Saiyan too through his knowledge of the genes. So beyond that, They even say here, Cell says, we could have acquired the cells of Trunks, but we had more than enough contributions from Saiyans. So 2 Saiyans that we know of, Goku and Vegeta, 2 Frieza race, King Cold clan characters, Frieza and his father King Cold, and the Namekian Piccolo. Those are who we were told. Now, he does mention that they could have gathered the cells from Trunks. Now, because we see the picture of when they were killed by Trunks, it seems like the implication is that somehow Cell had another Trunks who came from another timeline who killed King Cold and Frieza in his timeline. But I think that that's more of an inference that the audience will make here, because this is just how we saw them die. But for all we know, I mean, maybe Goku somehow used his finger game to finger Frieza to death like this, like chopped him in half, kind of like Trunks did, and blasted through King Cold. Or more accurately, because Piccolo's the one who's hearing this and imagining it, maybe this is his imagery. So it's never said by Cell that Trunks killed them in his future. Trunks was alive either way. At some point in the story, he talked about killing Trunks before this to steal his time machine, or, around this time. So that could be maybe not a plot hole, but that's a whole other story for another day. So in terms of all of that, these are the only characters we're explicitly told the cells came from. We can go even further than that. We can go even further beyond. Wrong arc, I know. But we can go into the explanation straight out of the manga from Toriyama, which is somewhere around here that I will find, well, very soon, where we get into the explanation often referred to as the Android Jinzo Ningen ABCs. So as we can see right here, it goes more in depth in the manga itself into, well, what exactly happened here with Cell's creation. Before the fight, Dr. Gero had attempted to utilize biotechnology with the dream of creating a new typing of artificial human, again, an android, a bio one in this case. Due to time constraints, he programmed his computer to finish the job, allowing the project to continue unattended. This being is created from the living cells of Goku, Piccolo, Vegeta, Frieza, Frieza's father, along with many other organisms. That's a part that might be worth mentioning right now. So let me talk about that a little bit in terms of his techniques. Now, we do know that, for instance, Cell uses a number of techniques in especially the anime version of the story. Cell touches on some of the techniques he knows in the manga. Like, for example, we have right here when Cell meets with Krillin and this version of Trunks for the first time. Piccolo mentions that he knows the Kamehameha. Krillin's surprised, and Cell says, "That's right, Krillin. Not just the Kamehameha. If I needed, I could probably create a Genki Dama as well." Now, I can't do it in the cards, but I did a whole video about if Cell actually could have made a spirit bomb on my channel that you guys can see. But let's see, in terms of that, let's keep going. So he goes and he escapes right here using the solar flare. Everyone's surprised. Piccolo, well, I guess maybe his Namekian regeneration helped his retinas a little bit so he didn't go totally blind. And what happens? He escapes. Now, we see right here, Piccolo is shocked. He's like, "I thought the Taioken, the Fists of the Sun," or in this case, he's saying that, well, maybe he means the solar flare was one of 10 Shinhan, or Tien's, techniques. Krillin says right here, the Taioken isn't very difficult to pull off. Both Goku and I can do it too. So here's the thing. It's interesting that in the manga, Toriyama seems to go to an extent to be like, oh, well, Cell can use other people's techniques that they might have invented, like Tien with the solar flare. However, he could have gotten it from Goku, for instance. And so in that case, it almost seems like Toriyama was going out of his way to exclude the possibility of Tien cells or Krillin cells or somebody else like that being used in Cell. The only ones he wrote down, or he wrote Cell to say, are Goku, Piccolo, Vegeta, Frieza, and Frieza's father. He does say, though, again, many other organisms. Now, in terms of the anime version, we see Cell use a lot of other techniques. He uses the multiform, which often is attributed to Tien, but he also is using, a move that in the anime, Piccolo uses the multiform, which he uses to train. The Makanko Sappo, obviously from Piccolo, but it goes further than that. He does use the Kienzan, the Destructo Disc. But remember, the Kienzan is used by both Goku and Frieza in the story as well. It's not something that Cell would have to get from Krillin. So in terms of most of the techniques that Cell uses, well, there's only one technique I could think of in terms of an ability that his Cell Juniors in particular are using, which is the Tri-Beam. That you can argue perhaps that, for instance, well, where would he have gotten it from other than Tien? So in the anime version, it's possible that another character could have used the Tri-Beam of these 5 that he had got in the organisms, the particular cells from those organisms. Goku, Piccolo, Frieza, Vegeta, and King Cold. But with that being said, it's possible in the anime that they used even more cells. And again, Toriyama did write right here that he used many other organisms, Gero in this case, when he created Cell. However, with that being said, it could also come down to his design. I mean, look at Cell and his design compared to all of the other characters used in him. He might have height like Piccolo, King Cold, and Frieza's second form, okay? But none of them have this camo looking design. None of them have this kind of like duck beak sort of mouth. Or these types of this like head thing on the back of his head, like this weird brain cage, let's say. They have kind of pointed heads like King Cold and Frieza in a sense. But at the same time, again, it's like, well, they don't have this type of tail that can absorb. They do have extendable tail, especially in the anime version. So there are different components you could say might have come from, let's say, Frieza, King Cold, the Saiyans, particularly like their personalities and their ability to get Zenkais and different genetic powers. But Piccolo, the height, the green coloration, let's say, for some of his body. But again, Cell looks very different in terms of the overall construction from a lot of the other characters in all of his forms. He looks more insectoid. He looks more reptilian in a different way than the changeling reptilian creatures here, the shape-shifting reptile people of Frieza's clan. So where would that come from? Well, maybe some of the other organisms Gero used were like, for instance, a cicada. I mean, for instance, Cell, he goes into a type of larval form, which is very reminiscent of like a cicada, buries himself underground for years, and then after he's ready, comes out of the ground, he has the wings, he has a different form, he's able to take flight and take fight, right? And so maybe Gero used ideas like that. After all, Cell took a very long time to, well, be completed in terms of just his imperfect form. So maybe Gero decided that because he would take so long, because he was so complex, to use sorts of, well, insects like, the process of how they evolve during their life. We have, for instance, butterflies. They start as caterpillars, they go into a cocoon, they go through a metamorphosis, and they become a butterfly. Or, you have the moths, or you have, again, the cicada. So he could have used a variety of different insects. He could have used a variety of different lizards, of other types of species that change slowly over time and gradually in order to become, well, their perfect form in a sense, much like Cell represents kind of an evolution as well as like the changing of time itself. So I could see that very well being the case, that it was a blend of these 5 fighters. Maybe in the anime they used even more, and also insects, lizard, and other things that he could find on the earth in order to invariably lead to him being able to craft. I mean, you never know. He could have even used Captain Ginyu Frog, for all we know, right? That could have been one of the creatures, the Namekian frog, that could have been used. And like we know in Jurassic Park, when they used frog DNA to fill in some of the sequences for the dinosaurs, which allowed them to change sex so that they're able to in turn, well, breed and reproduce and so on and so forth. So with regard to that, it's entirely possible that he used a wide variety of terrestrial creatures and then all of these different types of aliens along the way when he was trying to make his perfect life form of Cell. But with that being said, it seems like, again, in terms of the conclusion here, that there are 5 primary sources that Toriyama confirms of Piccolo, Goku, Vegeta, Frieza, and King Cold, and then it's just ambiguous as to what else he put into the concoction. For all we know, Gero might have even put some of his own DNA in there too, just so that he could live on in one form or another in his son, his perfect son, Perfect Cell. But maybe that's a story for another day. Let me know what you think down below. What did you think that they used to create the perfect villain in Dragon Ball? Check out those videos. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and stick around, because there's a lot more Cell Saga Media, We Are Perfection, to come in the future.
Yeah, and you better subscribe.